Hans Wormhat, this is one of my favorite topics that I don't get to talk about very often, so I figured I'd make a video today on this. And I want to start with talking about Nanook of the North. It's a 1922 American silent documentary film by Robert J. Flaherty with elements of docudrama at a time when the concept of separating films into documentary and drama did not yet exist. It's interesting. At the time, they didn't even separate the idea of a documentary and a drama. I guess it kind of reminds me of today's what they call reality TV is kind of, you might say, a docudrama. And I think that's just a big thing that a lot of people don't understand about the final product that you see on the screen. You're watching a story that editors put together, and especially true of reality TV, you'll hear people constantly bring up about how the editing, it's all about the editing and how whatever story they want to piece together, they usually can by splicing what somebody says and putting it in where they never said it, but the editors make the show basically. They have some script and they take the footage and they apply it to whatever story they want to do. And of course there's some limitations to that, but it's more or less true that the editing can do basically whatever it wants to. And a lot of stuff is staged too, and it always has been. Some criticized this director for staging several sequences, but the film is generally viewed as standing alone in its stark regard for the courage and ingenuity of its heroes. It was one of the first 25 films selected for preservation for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. And so it's one of those things that's well known as being fake and staged, but it's like people just turn a blind eye and they pretend that, well, it's a good enough representation of reality. I don't know what I mean, the truth is that it pushes an agenda and it pushes their false history narrative. So that's why they're okay with it being staged. But of course, what they'll say is, well, that they're just trying to portray it, and so you have to stage it. I don't know exactly what their excuses are. But here we go. The first thing is Nanook is not even this person's name. Their name was Alak. But Flaherty chose this nickname because of its seeming genuineness, which is hilarious. That they, in order to seem more genuine, meaning fit the public's already preconceived notions, because the only thing that people ever think is like what the media tells them. So at the time, I guess, the media would just make up stuff like the media always is, and Nanook seemed more genuine. This person had to come up with a fake name because it was more genuine, seemingly more genuine. Do you see the irony in that? Anyways, which makes it more marketable to Euro-American audiences. The wife shown in the film was not really his wife. According to this person, the two women uh, of Nanook and Kunayu, whose real name we do not know, were not the wives, but they were in fact common law wives of the person making the film. Yeah, I just already, when I read this part, I was like, this is some amazing stuff. And it keeps getting better. And although Alak normally used a gun when hunting, this is something that you constantly will hear people from Africa too do the same thing. Actual Africans from Africa, when they come over and they realize what people think of Africa, they get really offended, because if you're just over here watching the media, you think that in Africa it's just a bunch of children running around with flies on them and extended bellies, and that's what you think of when you think of Africa. So when a real African comes over here, they're like disgusted that that's what they think of where they're from. And in the same way here, you can see that the media didn't want to portray real life. This person used a gun when hunting, but they were like, no, 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 you gotta make it look like you're a savage. Um, Flaherty encouraged him to hunt after the fashion of his recent ancestors, and that's a bunch of BS too. That's mostly what this video is going to be about. The whole Eskimo story, Native American story, is a hoax. And it's a big cover up for. They use these people to cover up history. And I don't know exactly what it is, but the Bible has some clues. And if you the fun of rejecting the narrative, once you realize that it's all fake, the fun is that nobody really knows the right answer, and the truth is out there for people to find. And anyways, continuing on. This person also exaggerated the peril to Inuit hunters with his claim, often repeated. Again, this recurring theme of people will just keep repeating lies over and over, and it'll just stick eventually. That the Alauerkialak had died of starvation less than 2 years after the film was completed, whereas in fact he died at home, likely of tuberculosis. Furthermore, it has been criticized for portraying Inuit people as subhuman Arctic beings without technology or culture, which reproduces the historical image that situates them outside of modern history. It was also criticized for comparing Inuit people to animals. It's a result of historical fascination for Inuit performers in exhibitions, zoos, fairs, museums, and early cinema. It's all cinema, it's all a stage. The whole world's a stage, and I think that the bulk of the Native American hoax, it's to hide the true history of the Americas. I think that dark-skinned people were already here in America, and all the tribe stuff is just made up. It seems like they took one culture and spread them out and said, we're going to pretend that you were actually 50 different cultures. And that's my opinion on that. Although it almost seems like there's two different types, because it seems like the Native Americans, sometimes they look like Asian, and then sometimes they look more like the Aztec, the like Mexico area. The director defended his work, stating, one often has to distort a thing in order to catch its true spirit. And the building of the igloo was very staged. It's one of the most celebrated sequences in the film. I don't know if igloos are, if anybody actually lives in them, if anybody ever did live in igloos. And I think it's going to be one of those things. Actually, I've seen courses at universities on like wilderness survival and for like snow wilderness survival, and I know one of the things that they do is build like a snow house, and it's just one of those things that it's like a white person thing. There, you're gonna find way more white people that are interested in doing things like building igloos, and it's just a really interesting observation. In the trade post of the white man scene, Nanook and his family arrive in a kayak at the trading post, and one family member after another emerge from a small kayak akin to a clown car at the circus. Going to trade his hunt from the year, including the skins of foxes, seals, and polar bears, Nanook comes in contact with the white man, and there is a funny interaction as the two cultures meet. They still pull off this same BS today with the videos of alleged uncontacted tribes, the alleged videos of cannibalistic tribes. They pull this same type of campy stunt. The trader plays music on a gramophone and tries to explain how a man cans his voice. Bending forward and staring at the machine, Nanook puts his ear closer as the trader cranks the mechanism again. The trader removes the record and hands it to Nanook, who at first peers at it, and then puts it in his mouth and bites it. The scene is meant to be a comical one, as the audience laughs at the naivety of Nanook and people isolated from Western culture. In truth, the scene was entirely scripted, and Alakarialak knew what a gramophone was. There you go. It's all fake. It has been noted that in the 1920s, when Nanook was filmed, that the Inuit had already begun integrating the use of Western clothing and were using rifles to hunt rather than harpoons. It took no time at all for alleged native people to just completely abandon their alleged culture. And the truth is that they were just actors to begin with. They took one group of people and they told them all, you're going to be spread out over these lands and you're going to all pretend to be your own little thing. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think it's just to obscure history. The Masons, the people in control, they love to write their own his story. And I don't know exactly everything that they're trying to cover up, but I think the main thing is that there have been large cultures here before. And the proof of that is in all the beautiful masonry buildings all over the Americas. And the natives did not build that. The people who they call natives did not build that. And it's like they're just the remains of an empire lost. Same with, I believe that what are called African Americans today, I think that they've always been in the Americas. So I'm just giving an example of the type of history, true historical events that maybe took place that they would be covering up with this. Um. Anyways, this is Roger Ebert talked about it, that it was fake, basically. If you stage a walrus hunt, there's something strange about walruses. I don't know exactly what's going on with walruses. I think that they might be exaggerating the tusk thing, because the tusk kind of doesn't make sense to me. It's almost like a gnarly whale idea, which is another hoax. So here are some hoaxes that Inuit people are covering up. I'm very skeptical of the entire history of whaling. I kind of don't believe that they were hunting whales en masse and getting the oil from them. They probably were just making the oil out of something, out of garbage, like food products. They probably were doing something with all the leftover food products at the time. And who knows what the people that were whaling, who knows what they were actually doing, just going out and having a good time and fishing, just regular, but making these grand tales. I don't know. I'm skeptical of the whaling industry. And I know that things like narwhals are fake, and there's something strange about orcas too. It's like a strange SeaWorld thing only. And something about walruses. I think they might be exaggerating the tusk. I don't know if they're just taking a seal and adding a fake tusk. I honestly don't know exactly, but this footage did look odd. It looks like the thing that they do where they have like layers. We have this front layer with an actor, and they just add in later. Like, look at this. What even is that? It just looks like a gray blob. It almost even looks like somebody's just painting in the background or something. Very strange. Yeah, it just looks incredibly odd to me. The walrus, the obviously staged walrus thing. It had a lot of cinematic cuts, a lot of showing these people heave hoeing, but it wouldn't show the walrus in the same shot. Anyways, had this strange thing, had a whole story where somebody, uh, what do they say? The mate. Somehow they always seem to know that these romantic relationships between walruses, somehow they know that it was the mate of the walrus that came and did something. I don't know. It was strange, but it's admittedly staged. They didn't seem to really know what they were doing. They were really struggling. You would think that if these people were used to doing something like this, that they would actually be good at it, but it was clearly a struggle. Narwhals are a hoax. They are not a real animal, and they take seal footage and they just CGI this stupid head on it. And I think the narwhal is something that everybody can kind of tell that it doesn't make sense as an animal. It wouldn't be able to, with something so huge on its face like that, it would constantly be getting stuck in things that it shouldn't be getting stuck in, and it wouldn't be able to swim effectively. But anyways, animals with real tusks, like, make sense. Elephant tusks, they pretty much make sense. The walrus, I'm a little bit skeptical of it. I don't know exactly what's going on there. These have tusks, but they're not huge, and they make sense as like a fighting thing. Anyways, I want to end with talking more about this native hoax and making a point here. So, what is the deal with Eskimos? The fact that they're dark skinned up there is very questionable. I don't know anywhere else on Earth where there are dark skinned people far up in the north. It's definitely an anomaly. And this has always been kind of a strange thing to me about what they claim are native, the native culture. It seems like native people, besides putting on a headdress and hopping around and chanting, it seems like that's the extent of it. It doesn't seem like they really partake in anything that they tell us is the culture. Like living in a teepee, for instance. I love bringing up how the only people out there who want to live in a teepee or live in a yurt are white people. I have never, ever seen a native person show any interest in living inside of a teepee, but white people are all over this idea. Isn't that interesting? I live in a teepee. I mean, this person has like the New Mexico native look, but it's like a white person looking native, at least to me. This doesn't look like a Native American. Maybe this person is. I don't know. Maybe they got a little native in them. But to me, it looks like a white person that just like likes that look. When you think of it though, people who like the idea of living in a teepee, like the idea of living in a yurt, just think of the big push right now for people living off the grid. It's almost always white people. And I'm thinking like live off the grid in a crazy cold place like Alaska. It's almost always white people. Well, maybe got a little native in that one. Very white though, rosy red cheeks. So dog sledding. Have you ever seen an Inuit person doing dog sledding? It's a very white activity. White person activity. And I'm not saying that in like a good way, like I'm proud of white people for doing these things and like it's a great thing. I think it's vanity and a waste of time. I don't follow any sports or anything like that. I'm just simply pointing out the fact that these activities that are supposed to be like a native activity, they sure do seem overrun with a lot of white people doing them, and it doesn't seem like the alleged natives show any interest in this stuff. So to me, that seems odd. Something I love pointing out, horse girl. When you think of horse girl, you think of some horse-faced white girl. You don't think of native people riding on horses. That's just in the media, and it's in the media that people don't really talk about anymore. They've kind of fallen off center stage. It used to be a big talking point, cowboys and Indians. And I think that now that nobody talks about that stuff anymore, it's become apparent who the real horse girl is. It's some white girl. And it just doesn't seem like natives show any interest in riding horses. You would think that horse riding competitions would be overrun with native people that are just beating everybody. What happened to the generations and generations of knowledge about riding horses? And so here, I mean, here's a really good point. If you've ever spent time around native people or know things about them, they really cherish that idea of hidden knowledge and secret. They have so many little secret things that they will only tell to other native people. And probably the reason is that a lot of the secrets are, hey, it's all BS and fake, and our great grandparents were the first people to ever pretend to be this tribe. And anyways, but they have to pretend that it's super secret. But to continue the thought, you would think that they would be passing down their knowledge of dog sledding. You'd think that they'd be passing down their knowledge of riding horses. But I never see native people riding horses. I grew up right next to a tribe. I never saw them riding horses or having these crazy gardens. I never saw them gardening or doing anything like that. It's kind of a meme in the media. Maybe Cigar Store Indian has something to do with it too. It's just kitschy. It's really campy. And it's just a headdress. It's a costume that they put on. And there's this scene in Parks and Rec where this alleged native person goes up and pretends to be speaking in the native language, which I'm very skeptical of most native, what they claim are native languages. Usually it's like 20 words that they came up with. And that's it. That's the extent of it. They always speak English without an accent too. I mean, some of them have an accent, but a lot of them just speak totally like English is what they speak in their home. I grew up near a tribe. None of them spoke their tribe language in their home because I bet their tribe language was about 10 expressions, and that's the end of it. But anyways, in this Parks and Rec thing, he goes up there and he says, like, doobie doobie doo, and is pretending to speak their native tongue. I briefly said it earlier, gardening. You would think that the best home gardeners with all the greatest tips would be native people, but it's like all they have is the only thing I know about native gardening is they have this like three sisters thing. You plant a corn stalk, and then you plant a squash plant, and then you plant a bean, and they all work together. And it's like some white person probably made that up in the 70s. I don't think that that's a real thing. So I'll just tell another story about where I grew up. So I have no problem with native people. I just think that the culture is totally phony. I think that every person, you should never judge somebody just based off of where they were born or whatever. Every person deserves to be treated as an individual, and regardless of whatever tags they have attached to them based off of where or when they were born. However, I point out phonies, I point out fake stuff, and the native culture is just totally fake. And one reason that I know it's fake is, so again, I grew up near a native tribe, and so there was this person in the tribe, and I don't know what it was. Maybe the tribe had different rules about the trash, but there was this person, and this is what their house looked like. They just took all their trash and they would just throw it out in their front yard. And I don't know whatever happened to him. The person probably just eventually died and they came and bulldozed it all away. But I just always saw the irony of it. Like, what is this alleged native person doing here? And they just treat their front yard like a trash heap. And I guess this is kind of another strange story. Because I grew up near this, there was kind of a wilderness area near where I lived. And I always remember a really spooky, eerie feeling house that was like a native house, and it had a bunch of no trespassing signs all over it. And nowadays, of course, it's all been turned into casino type stuff. But just some thoughts from my childhood that stuck with me. I always crack up at this. Something that I can't believe I never thought of this until a few years ago. Where are all the Native American restaurants? There's no such thing as Native American restaurants because they don't have a real culture. All real cultures have cuisine. And even if you go way up into the north in the Norwegian type areas, you'll see they have an abundance of different cuisines and different preservation methods for the strange fish that they catch up there. And when it comes to native stuff, they have like three things, like fry bread. Where I live, they say that they make acorn bread. I've never heard of anybody making acorn bread down there. Anyways, there will be some places that claim to be an American Indian restaurant, but it's all BS. Medicine Wheel Nachos. Tokabe, Native American restaurant. Ancient BS Eskimo documentaries in black and white showed Chinese actor playing an Eskimo shooting a rifle at an invisible seal who was in the water and barking like a dog. I already talked about walruses, orcas, there's something weird with them. Bald eagles, I'll talk about that at the end. Polar bear, champagne bear. There's something weird about polar bears in that I think sometimes they'll take a regular bear and they'll just give them a peroxide job. And it sounds really terrible, but they really would do something like this. I just remember where I grew up, a lot of times what they told us were polar bears. They were like yellow colored. They looked like a peroxide job. It didn't look like a real polar bear. And anyways, the reason why the Inuit culture is fishy, whale blubber and blueberries, give me a break. Yeah, you can't, nobody survives on whale blubber and blueberries. It's not a real culture. It said they had dark skin because the salmon in their diet supplied vitamin D. Yeah, that's something very suspicious I don't hear people bring up. What's up with these dark-skinned people way up north? Only white people use sled dogs, though. I don't know if any true Inuit ever done serious dog sledding in a long time. Maybe half or less Inuit ancestry, but it's white people stuff. White people are pale and have big upper noses and thick hair. Just kind of another interesting observation. These don't really look like people that were built to live in really cold climates. A lot of them can't even grow facial hair. And they look like Mongolians to me. Like these look straight out of China. And they're doing strange hand signs, that center hand sign, it's like a micro. It's like a hermaphrodite hand sign, I believe. I think that hand sign means that they're a hermaphrodite. And think of native cultures they have that understanding of two-spirit people. It means that they know the secret about all the hermaphrodites. Yeah, these look like Asian people. That's a strong woman. These look more like mountain people to me. White people, and again, I'm not making this out to be somehow that white people are better just because they're built for living on the ice wall. I don't think that at all. I just think that what they tell us are the Eskimos are totally made up, phony people, and I don't think that they belong there. And not in a they need to get out of their way. I'm just saying their body, their physically, their what do you call it? Like their race doesn't match where they live. That's all I'm saying. Whereas these people look maybe better suited. And it's strange that these people are using teepees too. Kind of interesting. Of course, you're going to get a lot of Free Martins. Look at that thing. That's the matriarch right there. Scary. Look at that. Seriously. Oh, man. They just look a little better suited. Whoa. Looks like Boy George. To me, looks like a better suited peoples for living on the ice wall. And this one down here looks like Jenner. Looks like Caitlyn Jenner. Not even like Bruce Jenner. It looks like Caitlyn Jenner. Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 22. Thus saith the Lord, Behold, a people cometh from the north country, and a great nation shall be raised from the sides of the earth. This is another clue at the true shape. Of course, no truth is going to be so easy that if you go to a shill channel, they're going to be giving you the whole truth. One of the biggest lies about flat earth that just enrages me is about how almost everybody still believes the shill flat earth map, when there's clues in the Bible, and there's just common sense clues too, that should tell you that that map is inside out, actually. And so here's one. The sides of the earth are the north. There's another verse that tells us that the north is the sides of the earth. But in the shill flat earth map, they put the north as the center, not the sides. And so I guess to go back to what is the conspiracy? What are they covering up? Some people call it Tartaria. I just think what it was is there were peoples in the north, and a huge group of peoples, and the Bible talks a lot about people coming from the north and destruction coming from the north. And I think that maybe it's where they get the idea of Vikings. I think that they probably were the descendants of giants, really tall white people from the north. So here, this can be debunked so quickly. The easiest way to debunk this is to say, Alaska is huge. Alaska is basically like half the size of America. Russia is huge. Everybody knows that Russia is huge. So why does almost everybody agree on a map that contradicts that? Look how crammed into the center. All of the most huge places have been crammed into the center. That doesn't make sense. And it's because it's inside out. This is more like what the true Earth looks like on the right there. The immense lands of the north, it's that stretched out ice wall. It's the ice wall. The ice wall is not Antarctica where nobody can go. No, the ice wall is the immense lands in the north. And they stretch around like this. And I think a lot of times when you fly on an airplane, I think that there's a stretch of water above all the northern continents or whatever, however you want to think of it. And I think that they're kind of flying in that water channel. I don't know exactly how it works, but I know that this picture on the right is a lot closer to the truth. I mean, this is inside out on the left. It's wrong. Job chapter 26, verse 7. He stretcheth out the north over the empty place, and hangeth the earth upon nothing. The north is the place that hangs over nothing. And that means the outside, not the inside. The north is not stretched over the empty place. But over here, the north On the right side, the north is stretched over the empty place. I'm going to end with this. Everything is a lie. Everything you've ever been told is a lie. When we see a bald eagle, we think of the like coming to get you. But this is what a bald eagle really sounds like. Everything is a lie, except Jesus Christ is the truth. The Bible's true, and I hope you enjoyed the video. God bless everyone.